Prison is supposed to be the end of the road for the world's most dangerous criminals. But for some, their story didn't end with a sentence. It ended with blood. Today we're counting down 20 infamous criminals who met a violent death behind bars. Jeffrey Dahmer. Known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, he murdered 17 young men between 1978 and 1991, committing acts of necrophilia and cannibalism. Sentenced to 16 life terms, he was killed in 1994 inside Columbia Correctional Institution by fellow inmate Christopher Schaefer, beaten to death with a metal bar. His death was as brutal as his crimes. José Anderson. Serving life for murdering his wife, he infamously tried to frame 2 black men for the crime. In 1994, while cleaning the prison gym alongside Jeffrey Dahmer, he was attacked by Christopher Schaefer. He died 2 days later from his injuries, making Schaefer's rampage a double execution. Whitey Bulger, Boston's most feared mob boss and a longtime FBI informant, he was serving 2 life sentences when, in 2018, just hours after being transferred to Hazleton Federal Prison, he was savagely beaten to death by fellow inmates with a padlock stuffed inside a sock. His face was left unrecognizable, a fittingly violent end to a life of betrayal and crime. Carl Williams, a key figure in Australia's Melbourne Gangland wars. He was serving life at Barwon Prison when, in 2010, he was bludgeoned to death with a makeshift weapon fashioned from an exercise bike handle. His murder marked the bloody conclusion of a decade-long criminal feud. Richard Huckle, dubbed Britain's worst pedophile, he abused dozens of children in Malaysia while posing as a missionary. Sentenced to 22 life terms, he was murdered in 2019 inside Full Sutton Prison. Fellow inmate Paul Fitzgerald carried out a sadistic and prolonged attack, calling it justice for his victims. Roger Kibbe, the I-5 Strangler. Known for stalking California's highways in the 70s and 80s, he strangled women along Interstate 5. Convicted of multiple murders, he was killed in 2021 inside Mule Creek State Prison, strangled to death by his cellmate Jason Boudreaux, the same way he killed his victims. Gerard John Schaefer. A Florida deputy turned sadistic killer, he lured and tortured young women. Convicted of 2 murders and suspected of dozens more, he was stabbed to death in 1995 by fellow inmate Vincent Rivera inside Florida State Prison, ending the life of one of America's most depraved predators. Lloyd Avery II. An actor best known for Boys in the Hood, he turned to crime and committed a double homicide. Sentenced to life, he was strangled to death in 2005 at Pelican Bay State Prison by his cellmate, a Satanist who staged a ritual with his body, a shocking end to a Hollywood tragedy. Felix Mitchell. Felix the Cat. Mitchell was an Oakland drug lord who ran a heroin empire that made millions a year. Convicted in 1985, he was stabbed to death just a year later inside Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary. His lavish funeral drew thousands and featured Rolls Royces, cementing his legend as a criminal kingpin. Rodolfo Cadena. Cheyenne. A charismatic leader of the Mexican Mafia, he sought to unite rival gangs to stop prison violence. In 1972 at Chino Prison, dozens of Nuestra Familia members ambushed him. He was stabbed over 50 times, thrown from a balcony, and stabbed again. His death ignited decades of bloody gang warfare. Yvan Colonna, a Corsican nationalist convicted of assassinating a French prefect, he became a symbol of independence for his island. In 2022, he was brutally attacked by a radical Islamist inmate in prison. He fell into a coma and died weeks later, sparking riots and political unrest in Corsica. Thor Christiansen. The Hitchhiker Slayer. He preyed on young women in the late 70s. Serving a life sentence at Folsom Prison, he was stabbed in the chest in 1981 by another inmate, dying instantly. Justice came swiftly behind bars. Leslie Bailey, a British child killer and pedophile, he was kept in protective custody at Whitmore Prison. In 1993, he was strangled to death by 2 inmates who broke through security measures to kill him. Authorities called it one of the most vengeful prison murders in UK history. John Geoghan, a former Catholic priest at the center of Boston's clergy abuse scandal, he was serving time at Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center when, in 2003, he was cornered and strangled by inmate Joseph Druce. He jammed the cell door shut to prevent guards from intervening, making the murder deliberate and drawn out. José Antonio Rodriguez Vega. The Old Lady Killer, a Spanish serial killer who murdered at least 16 elderly women in the 1980s. He was sentenced to 440 years in prison. In 2002, he was stabbed to death by fellow inmates who claimed they were avenging his victims. Charles Schmid, the Pied Piper of Tucson. Infamous for murdering 3 teenage girls in the 1960s, he was serving life when, in 1975, fellow inmates attacked him. He lingered for days before dying from his injuries, closing the book on one of America's most chilling murder sprees. Donald Leroy Evans, a self-proclaimed serial killer who claimed dozens of victims across multiple states, he was on death row at Mississippi State Penitentiary when in 1999, he was stabbed to death in the shower by another inmate, bringing his twisted story to an end. Colin Hatch. Convicted of murdering a young boy, he was considered one of the UK's most reviled criminals. In 2011, while serving life at Full Sutton Prison, he was strangled by inmate Damien Folks, who later said he killed Hatch to cleanse the prison. Enriqueta Martí. The Vampire of Barcelona. Accused of kidnapping and killing children in early 1900s Spain, she was arrested in 1912 and jailed at Reina Amalia Prison. In 1913, she was beaten to death by fellow inmates. Many believe she took dark secrets to her grave. Albert DeSalvo. The Boston Strangler. The man who confessed to being the Boston Strangler, he was serving life at Walpole State Prison when in 1973, he was found stabbed to death in his cell. The identity of his killer remains unknown, adding mystery to an already chilling case. From serial killers to mob bosses, these criminals met violent ends inside the very walls meant to contain them. Which of these stories shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime stories.